it's taken me a long time to even think about how wrong it is that I was just awake throughout the whole thing. I think that that's probably where a lot of my issues then came from later on when I was recovering, because it was a long operation. And under what circumstances is a partner or a family member ever allowed into a heart operation, a brain operation? You know, and I've spoken to other women since who have had complicated deliveries who have been put under general anaesthetic, and I don't know why I wasn't, because it's a lot for the human brain to have to witness, to actually, like, you know, full cognitive functioning, to see it all, to hear it all, to smell it all, to see the faces, the panicked faces around you, like the clattering of feet, like I could feel shaking hands. I mean, the whole thing, I was so... And also not to be able to run away from it, because it's obviously the human instinct to survive, and everyone talks about fight and flight, but they rarely talk about freeze, which I guess is what I've struggled with quite a lot, because I couldn't move. Like, I couldn't run off the operating table. I couldn't do anything to keep myself alive. The only thing that my head was saying was just breathe, and maybe in the next minute it will be finished. And I was just turning to Ryan all the time, asking him whether I was still alive, because I couldn't quite understand, like, how this was happening to me and how I was still alive with all of the chaos in the room. And
And essentially, for anyone who doesn't know, essentially, you were cut somewhere that you shouldn't have been cut.
Yeah.
And you were literally...
Yeah, so my uterus was like an elastic band, or like a balloon that, they'd sort of wrapped all around it. They're supposed to just cut, you know, layers in and make an incision, I suppose, where they pull the baby out, which is just a straight line, but mine sort of went all the way around, and nicked something down on my lower left side, and the bleeding was just non-stop. And there was, unfortunately, and I guess this is kind of indicative of what was to come then later on in my recovery, but there was a bit of false hope kind of halfway through, where because I honestly thought I was going to give up. I was like, I can't do this any longer. Like, can we just put an end to this? And Ryan asked them, you know, how much longer it was going to last, and they'd said, oh, we're nearly done, we're stitching her back up, and so 15 minutes. And then that wasn't, because then something else had happened, and they were like, oh, no. So then it was kind of a further large chunk of time. And that was really, really difficult then to kind of just keep like, you know, experiencing. And when it finally was over, I then don't remember anyone. I didn't recognise anyone in the room. My body was just being moved onto what felt like a metal table. And I thought that I was dead. I thought I was in like a morgue that was, you know, I was on a trolley that was being wheeled around, because I didn't see Ryan. I didn't see, you know, any of the surgeons that had come in, a couple of extra people. I mean, there was a whole room full of people, and there were a lot of people kind of coming and going. And I didn't have a moment to even think about whether I had a child that was alive or not.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, you know, one of their kind of instinctual questions is, oh, do you feel really robbed of that kind of skin-on-skin initial baby contact thing? And I haven't even, because I feel like I've had so much other stuff to think about.
Yeah.
It hasn't even crossed my mind, you know. Now it is starting to, because I might never be able to get that opportunity back. You know, it's very unlikely that I will have, you know, any more children. So it's just horrendous, really. And sadly, you know, it doesn't actually, it doesn't even end there, because it then gets worse.
Yeah, it absolutely gets worse. While you are still in hospital, do you remember going to see Leo for the first time? Do you remember, you know, after the surgery, sort of, I want to say coming round, but you were still awake or being more, you know, with it, I guess, in terms of like processing. I mean, you know, you're still processing now, because it's such a barbaric and awful thing that's happened. But in those initial moments of kind of being somewhere, being still, what was going through your mind?
Basically, my mum came into the room. The news had obviously been delivered to her that this had all happened. And she came in and was shouting. She's not a shouty person. And I think she was swearing, saying like, what the is going on? Like, what's happened? And I have like a bit of a memory of that. And then I think, you know, my memory of like that very, very initial kind of like half an hour is pretty muted. And then I was moved into a side room. And then I kind of became a lot more with it, if you like.
Yeah.
And that was a really scary place to be, because I suddenly was that's when you're then not being operated on. So you're having to recover. You don't really know what's happened. There's not been a lot of explanation. You have to trust the people that are coming in and out of the room. You have to trust that they've been filled in on what's happened, because I didn't know what had happened. I couldn't really, again, you know, and I'm not a medical professional, so I couldn't be the one to go, oh, I used to say if someone had come in at the beginning or end of a shift, you know, and it was scary going into like a 12-hour night shift. I'm not the one doing the night shift, but I'm at the receiving end. You know, really trusting that someone was going to help me if something went wrong. And I felt like I was so weak and just so petrified. I'd go, I promise you, like, this is not, it's not like a normal case. Like, I don't know what you know, but I'm really scared. Like, I'm not good. Like, and the pain was awful.
Do you feel like you were taken seriously with how much pain you were in?
No, not with the pain. And I think that's something that actually the hospital during my birth debrief, which followed many, many, many months later, years later, they've said that is an issue, and they need to listen to a mother's pain levels better. And it's really hard, because how can you listen to someone's pain? So subjective.
Yeah.
They're not listening, you know, they're not living in someone else's body. And also, unfortunately, because some people have a really easy and wonderful childbirth experience, the spectrum is so wide. It's not like, you know, if 3 people have a heart operation, the chances are they'll share a lot of similarities when it comes to the recovery. Whereas that doesn't translate across to obstetrics.
By this point, you aren't recovering from a birth.
No.
You're recovering from major surgery. Do you know, it's very different. It's not a straightforward C-section that you're recovering from at this point.
No, and I
different.
should be somewhere in a high dependency unit, or in like a managed, like manned, warded bay with people that have extra experience. And that actually, there was one of them, but I wasn't put in it, which is again something that's not right, because they have like a certain ratio of staff to patients. And also, there is just a better level of care there. And my room was here, and that bayed area, I think of 6 beds, is just there. And I got to know that other area later on when I was readmitted into hospital, and that is exactly where I should have been.
Right.
If not even somewhere, you know, somewhere with even greater care.
Yeah.
So it was incredibly isolating being in a side room that some people pay for. I think it's £100 a night that you can pay for to go in this. It's still like part of the NHS kind of facility. But it wasn't a choice for me. Yeah. I was just put in there, and kind of then the door is shut, and then that's that. And you have a buzzer, and it's, you know, sometimes people don't come in immediately, and it's a...
Did you feel almost forgotten about in there?
I did feel forgotten about. And... you know, I think maybe it's like a bigger issue, isn't it? That when you're being treated in hospital, you get to speak to somebody once a day, and they'll tend to come around between maybe 8 and 10. So you kind of got to build up all of your questions ahead of that moment in time, and you've got to get everything answered in that window. But this wasn't something I was considering at the time, because I was so unwell when I was there. It really still felt like survival.